It feels like we're at this really interesting point with AI, almost like a tipping point. And it's not just about, like those flashy new features everyone's always talking about.
Yeah.
It's something much bigger than that. It's like we're moving towards this future where AI is everywhere, but it's almost invisible, like a ghost in the shell, just silently optimizing everything.
I like that, a ghost in the shell. That's a great way to put it. And yeah, you're right. This isn't just about incremental improvements anymore. We're talking about a fundamental shift in how we think about and use AI.
And a big part of that shift seems to be this concept of Servuktion. At least that's what keeps popping up in a lot of the research we've been looking at.
Absolutely. Servuksection is really at the heart of this whole transition from what we might call like feature-driven AI to a more service-driven model. And what's so fascinating about it is that it kind of flips the script.
How so?
Well, instead of asking, what can this AI do? Servuksection starts by asking, what can AI enable us to do? It's a subtle but really powerful shift in perspective.
Okay, so let's dig into this Servuktion thing a bit more. One of the sources we looked at described it as like a pretty radical departure from how we traditionally think about services.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's about moving away from that kind of rigidity of traditional production lines, where everything is very standardized and predictable. And instead, it's about embracing a more fluid, needs-based approach to delivering services.
So it's less about the how and more about understanding the why and when behind the service.
Exactly. It's about understanding the context in which a service is needed and then being able to deliver it with incredible precision and adaptability. Imagine AI as this like conductor orchestrating all these different services, making sure they're delivered exactly when and where they're needed.
So instead of us giving AI a command, it's more like it anticipates what we need and just does it.
That's the idea, and we're already seeing glimpses of this in some of the smarter AI assistants out there. For example, think about a meeting scheduler that not only manages your calendar, but also takes into account things like your travel time, your preferred meeting times, even the availability of other
Oh
attendees.
yeah, I've seen some apps that try to do that.
Right, and those are early examples of how Servachinchen can play out in the real world. Instead of you having to manually input all the details, the AI analyzes all the relevant information and proactively suggests the optimal meeting slot. It's like having a personal assistant who can kind of read your mind.
That's pretty impressive.
Mhm.
But I guess it also raises some interesting questions like, doesn't this kind of anticipatory AI make it feel like AI is becoming too controlling? I mean, where do we draw the line?
You're right. That's a really important question. And it's one that we need to think carefully about as AI gets more sophisticated. But I think there are ways to address those concerns. One concept that I found really helpful is this idea of Nutzeffekt, which basically translates to actual benefit.
Nutzeffekt. Okay, so what does that mean in the context of AI?
Well, it's about shifting our focus from just evaluating AI based on its technical capabilities to actually measuring its positive impact on our lives. Does it actually reduce workloads? Does it lead to better decisions? Does it drive revenue? These are the kinds of questions we need to be asking.
So it's about looking beyond the bells and whistles and focusing on tangible results.
Got it.
One of the sources we read actually used the example of Netflix to illustrate how AI can be used in a way that provides real value without being intrusive.
Oh, yeah, Netflix is a great example. They've done an incredible job of using AI to personalize the user experience without it feeling creepy or overbearing. They use AI to analyze your viewing habits and suggest movies and shows that you might actually enjoy. And they're constantly learning and adapting so the recommendations get better over time.
That's true. I never really thought of Netflix as AI powered before, but it makes sense. They're using AI in a way that just feels natural and unobtrusive.
Exactly, and that's one of the key principles of Servuktion. It's about integrating AI in a way that feels seamless and intuitive. It's not about creating these separate AI tools that we have to learn how to use. It's about weaving AI into the fabric of our lives so it just works in the background.
This whole concept of real AI is starting to make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But if it's all about moving away from flashy features, how do we even know if AI is working its magic?
That's where the shift to outcome-focused thinking becomes so essential. Instead of being impressed by how many terabytes of data an AI can process or how complex its algorithms are, we need to focus on what it actually delivers. Does it help us get things done more efficiently? Does it make our lives easier? Does it create real value? That's what really
It's
matters.
like saying, don't tell me how fast your AI can run.
Yeah.
Show me what it can actually accomplish.
Exactly. It's not about the technology itself, it's about the results it delivers. One of the sources we read even suggested that the ultimate goal of AI should be to become as unnoticed yet essential as electricity. It should just quietly power everything in the background without us even having to think about it.
Wow, that's a pretty powerful image. But if AI becomes that sophisticated and personalized, wouldn't we need to be constantly configuring it to meet our individual needs?
Well,
That sounds like a lot of work.
that's a valid concern, but that's actually one of the biggest challenges and opportunities in developing real AI. A key principle of Servuktion is the ability for AI to understand user expectations dynamically without requiring constant manual configuration.
So are we talking about AI that can actually read our minds?
Well, maybe not literally. But the goal is to create AI that can learn and adapt to our preferences so seamlessly that it feels like it knows what we want even before we do.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
Okay.
I'm definitely intrigued. But let's bring this back down to earth for a second. How do we actually get from where we are now with AI to this real AI future powered by Servuktion? What are the steps involved?
Well, the sources we've looked at are pretty clear on this. It's
Kind of like having a personal AI assistant who anticipates your needs before you even ask.
exactly. And finally, we need to fundamentally change how we measure AI success. Instead of focusing on technical metrics like processing speed or accuracy, we need to evaluate its impact on real-world outcomes, its nuts effect.
It all makes perfect sense. But if this shift is already happening, why is it so important to talk about it now? Why is this something that we need to be focusing on?
Because the challenge isn't just technological, it's also strategic. Businesses and developers who understand and embrace this servuktion-driven approach to AI will have a massive advantage in the coming years. They'll be the ones creating the indispensable services of the future.
So it's about recognizing the opportunity and being prepared to adapt. We need to think differently about AI design differently and measure success differently.
Absolutely. This is a call to action for anyone who wants to shape the future of AI. This is where we'll pause for now. When we return, we'll dive into some real-world examples of this real AI that's already emerging around us.
All right, so welcome back. I think now would be a good time to maybe, look at some like real world examples, see how this real AI is actually playing out.
Yeah, I agree. It's one thing to talk about the concepts, but it's always more interesting to see how these things are being applied, in the wild.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe we could start with this idea of AI-driven service execution. Remember we talked about how real AI is all about anticipating needs and acting without explicit instructions, right? Well, smart home technology is a perfect example of this.
Okay, yeah, I see where you're going with this. Like
Yeah,
those smart thermostats that learn your temperature preferences and adjust automatically.
exactly. Instead of you constantly having to fiddle with the settings, AI just takes care of it in the background. It
Mm.
learns your patterns, when you're home, when you're away, and make sure the temperature is always comfortable. It's like having a little invisible butler who's always one step ahead.
That's a good analogy. But of course, this kind of technology also raises some privacy concerns, right? I mean, these systems need access to a lot of personal data in order to work effectively.
Yeah, that's a good point. How do we balance the convenience of these AI-powered services with the need to protect our privacy?
That's a critical question, and I don't think there's an easy answer.
Okay.
But I do think that the principles of Servuktion can help guide us here. It's about designing AI systems that put human well-being first. It's not about collecting data for data's sake. It's about using data responsibly to provide real value to users.
So it's about AI that serves people, not the other way around.
Right. And this idea of AI-driven service execution goes way beyond just temperature control. Think about smart lighting that adjusts based on the time of day or your activity, or appliances that optimize energy usage based on your habits and real-time energy prices.
So it's not just about individual devices. It's about creating this whole ecosystem of interconnected AI-powered services that work together to simplify our lives.
You got it. And the more data these systems have access to, the more effectively they can learn and adapt to our needs. But of course, this has to be done in a way that respects ethical considerations and user privacy.
This brings up a really interesting point, though. I mean, how do we ensure that these AI systems are actually being used responsibly? With so much data at their disposal, could there be potential for misuse?
You're absolutely right. That's a huge concern. And it's one that we need to be talking about more as AI becomes more sophisticated. We need to develop mechanisms to audit these systems, make sure they're not perpetuating biases or being used in ways that harm people.
It seems like we need to shift our thinking from AI as a single point solution to AI, as this kind of like integrated layer of intelligence that permeates our entire environment.
I like that. That's a great way to put it. And this shift is already happening in a lot of different industries. Think about how navigation apps have evolved over the years.
Oh, yeah. I remember when GPS devices first came out, it was a big deal just to have turn-by-turn directions.
Right. But now navigation apps are so much more than that. They use real-time traffic data to predict congestion, suggest alternate routes, and even estimate your arrival time with amazing accuracy.
And they learn your preferred routes and destinations so they can make personalized suggestions.
Exactly. That's real AI in action. It's not just about following a set of pre-programmed instructions. It's about learning and adapting to the real world in real time.
It feels like AI is becoming less about giving us tools and more about providing us with these like seamless, personalized experiences.
I think that's a really good observation, and I think that trend is only going to accelerate as AI gets more sophisticated and more ubiquitous.
Hmm.
But it's important to remember that true personalization should empower users. It shouldn't be about manipulating them or taking away their control.
I completely agree. So where do you see all of this heading? What's the next frontier for real AI?
Well, I think one of the most exciting areas is healthcare. Imagine wearable devices that constantly monitor your vital signs and alert you to potential health risks before they even become serious problems.
That sounds amazing. But wouldn't that also create a ton of data about our health? Who would have access to that information? And how would we ensure it's protected?
Those are great questions, and they're not easy to answer. But I think they highlight the importance of establishing strong ethical guidelines for AI development, especially when it comes to healthcare. We need to be very careful about how we collect, use, and share sensitive health information.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about the social and ethical implications as well.
Exactly. And that's why I think the principles of Servuktion are so important. It's about designing AI systems that put human well-being first. It's about creating technology that serves us, not the other way around.
I'm starting to see how Servuktion can be this kind of like guiding framework for navigating the complex world of real AI.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. It's about moving beyond the hype and the technical jargon and focusing on what really matters. Creating AI that benefits humanity.
This has been a super insightful conversation, and I think our listeners are probably buzzing with ideas right now.
Hmm.
But before we wrap up this segment, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about businesses embracing this shift towards real AI. Why is this so important for companies to be thinking about?
This is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. This isn't just a theoretical discussion. This has real-world implications for how businesses operate and compete in the future.
Okay, so what's the key takeaway for business leaders who are listening to this conversation? What do they need to know?
The most important thing is to realize that the future of AI isn't about building bigger and better algorithms. It's about designing and delivering services that create real value for customers.
So it's about shifting the focus from technology to the human experience.
Exactly. It's about understanding what your customers need and want, and then using AI to deliver those things in a way that's seamless, personalized, and empowering.
And companies that can do that successfully will have a huge advantage in the marketplace.
Absolutely. They'll be the ones shaping the future of their industries.
It's not just about staying ahead of the curve, it's about defining the curve itself.
Right. And that requires a willingness to experiment, to innovate, to take risks, and to really embrace this new way of thinking about AI.
This has been an awesome conversation, and I'm sure our listeners are eager to hear more. We'll be right back for our final segment where we'll wrap up our deep dive into real AI and explore some key takeaways for businesses and individuals alike. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into real AI. It's been a fascinating journey, exploring this whole idea of servocitation and how it's reshaping our relationship with technology.
It really has. And I think we've covered a lot of ground, from the philosophical underpinnings of Servuktion to its real-world applications. But as we wrap up, I thought maybe it would be helpful to kind of distill some key takeaways, for our listeners.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. So if you had to sum up, the most important things people should remember about this transition to real AI, what would they be?
Well, I think it really boils down to three core principles. The first is that the future of AI is service-driven. It's not about building AI for its own sake. It's about seamlessly integrating it into our lives to deliver tangible value.
So it's about moving beyond the hype and focusing on real-world impact.
Exactly. The second principle is shifting our mindset from feature-driven development to outcome-focused design. It's not about packing AI with every imaginable feature. It's about making sure it delivers the desired outcomes for users.
So it's like saying, don't just tell me what your AI can do. Show me how it's going to make my life better.
Exactly. And the third principle is prioritizing trust and transparency in AI development. As AI becomes more deeply woven into our lives, it's crucial that people feel comfortable and confident interacting with these systems.
Trust is definitely paramount. We need to make sure AI is used ethically and responsibly, especially as it handles increasingly sensitive data.
Absolutely. And the principles of Servuktion provide a really robust framework for doing just that. It's about designing AI that serves humanity, not the other way around.
Well said. Those are some really powerful takeaways. Now, before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought-provoking question. Something to kind of chew on.
I'm all ears.
We've talked a lot about how real AI is going to change the world around us, right? But what about its impact on us as individuals? How will this shift change the way we think, work, and live our lives?
That's a great question, and I think the answer is multifaceted. On a practical level, I think real AI is going to free up a lot of our time and cognitive energy by automating routine tasks. This will allow us to focus on activities that require more creativity, critical thinking, and human connection.
So it's about augmenting our abilities, not replacing them.
Exactly. It's about leveraging AI to unlock our human potential. But on a deeper level, I think real AI is going to challenge us to redefine our relationship with technology. As it becomes more integrated into our lives, we need to be mindful about how we use it and how we make sure it aligns with our values.
That's a really crucial point. It's not just about embracing technology, it's about shaping it to serve our needs and aspirations.
I couldn't agree more. We have the power to decide how AI shapes our future. And it's our responsibility to make sure that it's a future where technology empowers us, enriches our lives, and helps us create a better world.
This has been an incredible journey into the world of real AI, and I'm so grateful for your insights. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure, and I'm really excited to see what the future holds for this transformative technology.
And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has inspired you to think differently about AI and its potential to reshape our world. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible. This is the Deep Dive signing off.